was launched at around 8:45 p.m. Beijing time. After almost 40 minutes of flight, the rocket successfully delivered its payload, the Shijian 20 communications satellite, into orbit. This launch will pave the way for other major missions in 2020 aboard this rocket, including the delivery of China's manned space station component, the Chang'e 5 lunar probe, and China's first mission to Mars. The Long March 5 rocket is the largest and, technically speaking, the most difficult rocket to launch in China. Since the second attempt failed in 2017, most of the engineers, the scientists and experts on the project have been working hard to solve the problem. CGTN's Wu Lei spoke to several experts on site about their preparation for the final launch.
A space launch is a combination of systematic engineering and includes the production, launch, and monitoring of the rocket. Since the engine failed in the second Long March 5 rocket in 2017, scientists at the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation have been researching and improving every aspect of its engine over the past 900 days.
We have gathered experts from our aerospace corporation as well as university experts to research and improve the engine's technology. There have been more than a dozen tests on the ground so far. More than a dozen assessments have been improved.
After the rocket was transported to Wenchang Space Launch Center, all the engineers at the site have been working around the clock to make their final preparations. Many engineers say that compared with the previous launch, they are more cautious this time.
We have prepared more emergency plans this time, and the plans have been drilled many times in case of any emergencies. There is evidence and work that can be carried out in an orderly manner.
China has been developing the Long March 5 rocket for over 10 years. Launching such a rocket requires more detailed on-site coordination and preparation.
Our team is in charge of operations, plans, commands, and dispatches. We are part of the systems engineering. Prior to this mission, all of our staff conducted 2 ground drills.
Before the final launch, Chen Shaojiang and his team were among the last group to evacuate from the launch pad. They say they must ensure that all ground preparations for the launch are in place before they leave.
Over the past 900 days, we have made a lot of technical improvements and made sure the propellant reserves more reliability and safety. The overall status of the launch pad has been optimized.
After decades of work, the engineers say China's intensive space launches demand greater levels of coordination and higher personal skills. They need to adapt to the faster pace and continue to improve for future space explorations. Wu Lei, CGTN, Wenchang Space Launch Center.
Now, China has big plans ahead for its Long March series of rockets. 2020 is expected to see the country's first Mars mission and the Chang'e 5 lunar probe with a successful launch of the Long March 5. In the same year, the Long March 8, a vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, will also be introduced. Meanwhile, a more ambitious rocket, the Long March 9, will be a super heavy lift launch vehicle set for takeoff by 2030. It will have the capacity to carry 140,000 kilograms of payload into low Earth orbit. It's a crucial vehicle in advancing China's long-term goals in space, including missions to return samples from Mars and landing humans on the moon. By 2035, China plans to make all launch vehicles reusable, then unveil a new generation of rockets by 2040. China, Russia and Iran have launched a joint 4-day naval exercise in the Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Oman. It is the first exercise held by the 3 countries. Moscow calls it an unprecedented exercise in naval cooperation and training. A leading Iranian military official says the message is a peace, a friendship and lasting security through cooperation. Russia has sent 3 ships to take part in the drills. Chinese Defense Ministry's spokesman Wu Qian spoke about the Chinese ship taking part in the drills.
The Chinese Navy will send its guided missile destroyer Xining to join the drills. The naval drills aim to deepen exchange and cooperation among the navies of the 3 countries and display their strong will and capability to jointly maintain world peace and maritime security. while actively building a maritime community with a shared future.
Let's now go to Niger, where the Islamic extremists on motorcycles have killed 14 security force members who are escorting election officials. The government confirmed in a statement that the attack took place Wednesday near Sanam, which is about 200 kilometers from the capital of Niamey. Officials from the National Electoral Commission were in the area to conduct a census before next year's vote. The victims were 7 military police officers and 7 National Guard members. Niger has long been vulnerable to Islamic extremism because it shares a border with Nigeria, where Boko Haram insurgents have been carrying out attacks for a decade. Niger is also a member of the G5 Sahel Regional Military Force, along with Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, and Mauritania, which has unsuccessfully tried to drive jihadists out of the vast region. This is the first large attack there since 71 soldiers were killed in a massive ambush earlier this month. A summit of 5 countries in the Sahel region is due in the French city of Pau. The summit will take place in January. France hopes to get a clear-cut plan for the region's military, political and development agenda, especially in regard to the fight against terrorism. This comes as the U.S. considers withdrawing thousands of its troops who've been fighting terrorists in West Africa. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more.
From terrorism to organized crimes, the Sahel region has been plagued by a spate of deadly terror attacks. Activities of terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIL in the West African province are among the growing threats to the security of the semi-arid region. The violence has left tens of thousands dead and millions displaced from their homes, and poverty remains a key reason for the spread and acceptance of terrorist ideologies.
They are idle hands. There are so many jobs for them. This ISIS gives $200 now for everyone. You know what is $200 in Nigeria of today, where there is hunger? The young man will jump in on it, and they will be promised so many other things, if you come on board. So it's left for our leaders to really, really work hard, strategize very well.
France and the U.S. have been committed allies in the fight against terrorism. In fact, French President Emmanuel Macron is due to host the G5 countries Mali, Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso and Mauritania early next year. And that is aimed at laying the groundwork for increased international support. But the U.S. says it plans to withdraw thousands of its troops back home, an action experts say would have grave consequences on the region.
The American government spend money on those who are constitutionally mandated to provide that security for them. So if America is pulling out, it's just like a tripod. When you remove one leg, you should know that the others will be shaking.
Despite the external support, terrorism still persists in the region, and analysts say so much more is required to eliminate it.
You make sure that you destabilize them. When you destabilize them, and then you cut off the source of livelihood, that is food. The second one, you cut off the source of funding. You cut off the source of supply of manpower. Then these 3, you do it. That's exactly what U.S. is doing.
Many are now calling for more effective counter-terrorism response, better coordinated regional military action, and more funding. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
U.S. President Donald Trump and the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi have urged parties to the Libyan conflict to take urgent steps to resolve the fighting. In a phone call on Thursday, the leaders rejected foreign exploitation in Libya. The statement from the White House came moments after the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced that Ankara should soon be deploying troops to Libya. Speaking shortly after returning from a one-day visit to Tunisia, Erdogan said Parliament is set to vote on a motion in January, which will pave the way for troop deployment. He had earlier indicated that his country is pushing for a ceasefire in Libya. Libya's government of national accord has been battling with the Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar for Tripoli. When and if deployed, the Turkish soldiers will be supporting the Fayyaz al-Sarraj-led government of national unity forces. But Libya's Tripoli-based government says it will only request Turkish military support if the conflict escalates. Well, earlier we spoke to our correspondent in Cairo, Yasser Hakim, for more analysis on what it will mean for Turkey to send its troops to Libya after a parliamentary vote in early January.
Well, the Arab League has issued a statement last night saying that they do also feel worried about the intervention from Turkey and other non-Arab countries, saying that this will lead to more conflict and more divisions in Libya and will not solve the Libyan crisis. The Arab League has called on all parties to stop intervening and to give more room and space for the peace process to bring results, to put both sides together on the table to discuss peace, and also to give a chance for the Berlin conference in where the Arab League will be also joining and is supporting, saying that the best way for Libya is to reach peace through the United Nations efforts. And that was the statement by the Arab League, which obviously has been clear that it does not back or support the Turkish involvement in Libya. Obviously, the involvement is military involvement, and that is where the concern is, that the Turkish president said that he will be sending troops to Libya, and this will obviously create more conflicts in the country. It will create more fightings between both sides rather than peace efforts. And obviously what we see now is that from one side you have the Libyan National Army led by Khalifa Haftar and supported by the Libyan parliament and sides in the region. And on the other side you have the Fayyaz Sarraj government, which has its own military units and groups, which are known to be from some militant groups, not an army, and they will be receiving the the military support from Turkey. Therefore, this will be leading to more conflicts and more divisions, one in the east and one in the west, and Libya could lead at the end, rather than a united Libya, but actually a divided Libya from east and west, where each side will have its own control of the country, and it can divide the country itself into two if this conflict even goes further and escalates. So this is the fear now, and the hopes are that the military intervention would stop, and that will be more of a political process and a peaceful process rather than a military process.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's announcement of a possible troop deployment to Tripoli is now raising the stakes in the conflict that has already sucked in regional and Western powers. Let's take a look at what's at stake for Turkey, as Laura Walubengo has that story.
It has long been known that Ankara has been supporting the besieged Libyan government of national accord that is based in Tripoli. Prime Minister Fayyaz al-Sarraj is currently battling Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar for Tripoli. This conflict broke out in April 2019 after Commander Haftar ordered his troops to go for Tripoli, having captured strategic oil fields from government forces. As the conflict got underway, several regional nations took sides. Saudi Arabia, France, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Russia and even the United States were linked to Haftar. Prime Minister Fayyaz al-Sarraj on his part is allegedly enjoying the support of Turkey, Italy and Qatar. All these were mere whispers until the Turkish president's recent open oil deals and the military support agreement with the Libyan administration. He signed a maritime border agreement with Tripoli, which creates an exclusive economic zone from Turkey's southern Mediterranean shore to Libya's northeast coast. This rattled Cyprus and Greece, which have been at odds with Ankara over maritime borders for decades. Days later, Ankara announced yet another deal with Tripoli. This time round, it was a military cooperation agreement. Erdogan's surprise visit to Tunisia was the telltale sign of Ankara's ambitions for Libya. When he landed back in Ankara, Erdogan spoke about the military plans.
Turkey signed a maritime agreement with Libya on one hand. On the other hand, we signed a military cooperation agreement with them. Hopefully, this agreement will pass from our parliament around 8th to 9th of January, and we will accept the invitation to send troops to Libya. This is the reason we are holding all these meetings. We are standing by the legitimate government of the country and accept their invitation. This is our difference.
It was not surprising, for the Libyan government has previously acknowledged receiving arms from Ankara, including these Kirpi armoured vehicles. However, putting Turkish boots on the Libyan soil could be an escalation of the situation. It will be the first time that a foreign army is participating in the conflict since America, France and the UK bombed Gaddafi out of Tripoli in 2011. Currently, President Erdogan is at loggerheads with the US over plans to acquire Russian missile defense systems. Being a NATO ally, the US sees this as a betrayal of the cause. Recently, the Turkish president was forced to back down from a military incursion into eastern Syria after Russia hardened its position over the move. The Trump administration negotiated the deal. Now, Libya is looking up to be yet another frontier for Ankara to collide with her former and present allies, including Russia, which is said to be on Khalifa Haftar's side. It could be a tough situation, especially if Haftar's supporters also send in their troops. Foreign powers fear that Libya could be yet another ground for proxy wars, wars that allow terrorist elements to regroup and flourish. President Erdogan's fluid relationship with regional and foreign powers fits into the long history of Turkey. In the run-up to the Crimean War, then Prime Minister of Britain, John Russell, is said to have described the Ottoman Empire as the sick man of Europe. The name has stuck up to now. Well, the Ottoman Empire is the present-day Turkey, and Erdogan seems to be walking that talk. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Senegal's Museum of Black Civilization traces history of Africa and diaspora from the beginning of humanity to the present day. And a company in Liberia is changing lives with a unique palm oil processing technique.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, as the year draws to a close, CGTN's Robert Negila sat down with China's ambassador to Kenya, Wu Peng, on a wide-ranging conversation looking back at the year that 2019 was and what Africa can look forward to from its largest trading partner and investor, China, in 2020.
As 2019 comes to an end, I'm joined by the Chinese ambassador to Kenya, His Excellency Wu Peng. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. We do appreciate it.
You are welcome.
Your Excellency, now I'll start off by asking, how would you describe China's relationship with Kenya at this particular moment?
China and Kenya are good brothers, not only just a development partner. Our relationship in recent years has developed by leaps and bounds. Kenya is an active partner in Belt and Road cooperation, and the Standard Gauge Railway from Mombasa to Nairobi is a sweet fruit of our two countries' cooperation. As Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized in his meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta, our bilateral relations are strategic and high level. Since 2015, China has been Kenya's largest trade partner and Kenya's major source of foreign direct investment. Currently, there are over 400 Chinese companies operating in Kenya, creating roughly 130,000 jobs for Kenyans. Nowadays, Kenya has become a favorable tourist destination in Africa of Chinese people. And studying in China has become a popular trend among Kenya young generation. The two people's friendship enjoys solid foundation.
Your Excellency, could you give us your recollections of major achievements in 2019 between China and Kenya?
Politically, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta successfully visited China again this year for the second International Forum on Belt and Road Cooperation. Mr. Yang Jiechi, as President Xi Jinping's special representative, visited Kenya, and Mr. Wang Yong, as special envoy, attended the launching ceremony of SGR Phase 2A freight service in Nairobi. The Garissa Power Station, the largest solar power station in East Africa, was also completed and put into operation. The Nairobi Airport Expressway, the first BOT project with Chinese investment, was officially put into construction. It shows that we are actively working together with Kenya people to achieve the Big Four agenda and the Vision 2013. From January to September 2019, Kenya registered about $105 million worth of exports to China, with a year-on-year increase of about 57%. That is a huge increase. Exports of fresh flowers has grown substantially. Now I'm very glad to tell you that from January 1st to 2020, the tariff of Kenya frozen avocado has been reduced from 30% to just 7%.
Your Excellency, looking forward to 2020, what trade and cultural opportunities are there for African countries in China in 2020?
I must emphasize that China's door of reform and opening up will keep opening further. In 2020, China will host the third China International Import Expo, CIIE. As China is currently making efforts to transform from a big trade country to a powerful trade country, that means it's put more emphasis on enlarging imports. The Chinese people's increasing demand for high quality, pollution-free and green products actually means good business opportunity for African countries.
And finally, Your Excellency, how would you describe China's involvement in Africa in 2019, and what can we expect in 2020?
Most important, let me put it into this way. We follow the principle advocated by our President Xi Jinping, the principle of pursuing the greater good and the shared interests, and strengthen solidarity and cooperation with African countries. In this year to 2019, the coordinators meeting on the implementation of the follow-up actions of the FOCAC Beijing Summit was successfully held in Beijing. In 2020, we'll continue to support the legitimate aspiration of African countries and advance our shared interests. We should work harder to increase Africa exports to China, to improve the trade structure further between China and Africa. And the Chinese side also shall encourage transform of Chinese enterprises operating in Africa from just a constructor to investors. Meanwhile, we should educate Chinese people in Africa to engage more closely with local community and strictly follow the laws and regulation at host countries.
Your Excellency, it's been an absolute pleasure. On behalf of everyone at CGTN Africa, I'd like to wish you and the embassy staff a happy 2020 and a prosperous new year. Thank you very much.
Eritrean President Isaias Afewerki has just wrapped up a 3-day state visit to Ethiopia. The official trip was also deeply symbolic for both nations. Decades of tensions had been breached after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed reached out to his Eritrean counterpart. Abiy was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to restore peace between both countries. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed gifted Eritrea a plot of land to build an embassy. The Eritrean president touched on the warm welcome he received from Ethiopia.
I really do not know what to say because it feels like we've been here for a week, but it's only been for a couple of days. The reason is that we've been showered with pleasant surprises. First of all, I'd like to thank my younger brother, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, for all that he has done for me and my people. Over the last 2 decades, our people have been staying apart from one another. Now, using this golden opportunity, we will make up for the time we have lost. We have full confidence and preparedness to change our old ways and collaborate in all sectors.
These past couple of days, President Isaias and I have visited so many places. We have realized there are lots of areas that Ethiopia and Eritrea can use as an opportunity for economic cooperation. We can strengthen our ties through infrastructure development, industry, agro-processing, as well as manufacturing. Today we give this plot of land for the construction of the Eritrean embassy in Addis Ababa. It's a Christmas gift from us to the President and the respected people of Eritrea. In 2020, Ethiopia and Eritrea will have excellent and better relations.
In Senegal, the Museum of Black Civilizations, built and equipped by China, celebrates its first anniversary. The main goal of the establishment is to present the history of Africa and its diaspora from the beginning of humanity to the present day through works of art. This year's celebration coincides with the largest Pan-African exhibition themed Lend Me Your Dream. CGTN's Beryl Oro has that report.
Since its inauguration in December 2018, the Museum of Black Civilization has continued to host large-scale exhibitions, conferences and scientific meetings. The museum was built thanks to cooperation between Senegal and China.
I think it is the most important museum in Africa. It is also one of the most important cultural institutions in the world. The museum has housed over 70 cultural, scientific and recreational events.
This museum welcomes all African artists and has become a junction of contemporary African art. It was built thanks to the good cooperation that exists between Senegal and China. Today, I'm very proud to attend this kind of exhibition because that was our goal, that the building can accommodate all African artists.
Built on a total area of 14,000 meters squared, this museum cost more than 30 million euros and can accommodate up to 18,000 exhibits.
This museum has become an opportunity for contemporary artists. There are many important artists known to the African public who today succeed in making themselves known through this museum.
This gigantic museum was born from China-Africa cooperation, and it is quite a symbol that this museum is built on an architectural orientation which is inspired by the boxes of Casamance and also the round boxes of the Great Zimbabwe. It is important to salute the fact, with the help of China, this remains a symbol of good cooperation between Africa and the world. Mao Zedong himself said that Africans are friends with China.
The Museum of Black Civilization has become a cradle of authentic pieces and original works retracing the powerful march of humanity and the evolution of the Black world and its people. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, let's now go to Ramanyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Kenya's equities market has reversed losses of roughly $4 billion from last year. And the IMF is asking the president of Equatorial Guinea to declare his assets before the country can get a bailout.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start in Kenya, where returns at the Nairobi Securities Exchange have overtaken those from fixed income assets, at least in 2019. The Nairobi Bourse's gains were mainly boosted by the telecommunications operator Safaricom and banking stocks. The all-share index over there rose by 16%. The NSE 20, as you'll see later on in the hour, fell by a similar margin. Now, returns from fixed income investments, which is mostly made up of government securities, range between 6.8% and 13.2%, depending on the maturity of the asset. Real estate returns were anywhere between 5.5% and 9%. Earnings from bank savings were pretty dismal. They actually fell to a 36-month low of about 4.6%. That, of course, does reflect the ongoing impact of the removal of interest rate caps in the course of the year. The International Monetary Fund has asked Equatorial Guinea's President Teodoro Obiang to declare his assets before the country can get more financial support. The Central African oil producer needs an IMF bailout in order to deal with the looming debt crisis, which has shrunk its economy by about a third. The OPEC member is struggling to pay off its debt after oil prices imploded back in 2014. The government since then has piled up an enormous amount of arrears with construction companies that's roughly equal to about 19% of its gross domestic product. Obiang is the world's longest-serving ruler. His regime has been accused by prosecutors in the United States and France of squandering the tiny state's vast oil wealth. Under a program agreed to last week, the state will be required to increase its transparency, improve governance, and implement reforms designed to fight corruption. On to Southern Africa now. Zambia's state-owned power company ZESCO will raise electricity prices for residential and commercial consumers starting in January. Its Energy Regulation Board says it has allowed ZESCO to increase electricity tariffs for the lowest band of residential consumers by more than 200%. However, these new measures will not affect global mining companies operating in the country. ZESCO is facing some pretty serious financial problems. The country's electricity supply shortage went up to 810 megawatts in November from 750 the month before, mostly due to the crippling drought that we're seeing in Southern Africa. The utility says it plans to quickly commission new power plants in order to plug that supply gap. Over in West Africa, Nigeria LNG has announced plans to proceed with the construction of the country's 7th liquefied natural gas production train. The new facility is estimated to take about 5 years and about $10 billion to complete. As planned, it should boost LNG output from the country by at least 35%. Africa's largest oil producer lost its position as the 4th biggest exporter of liquefied natural gas globally to the United States just last year. The country expects the project to deliver at least $20 billion in net revenues to the country. NNPC owns 49% of the firm that's implementing the project, followed by Royal Dutch Shell, which owns about a quarter. Total owns 15% of the firm, and that's of Nigeria LNG, and Italy's Eni owns about 10.4%. Now, 2019 did see African entrepreneurs continue to develop and deploy various solutions to the continent's vast array of problems. This story is about an innovator in Mali who created a voice-controlled app that entrepreneurs are using to market their goods and services to illiterate clients. CGTN's Alexander Majala has the details.
Ada Tembele sells fruits and vegetables on a street in Mali's capital, Bamako. Tembele is amongst a growing number of entrepreneurs who are illiterate but have found a novel way to do business through social media. It's called the Lenali Vocal app. Tembele attracts customers by sending a voiced message in Bambara with her stall's location as well as photographs of the fruits and vegetables she has available on the day.
Here are your lovely fruits. We have nice ripe oranges, apples, bananas, without forgetting to mention the pineapples. Today we have almost everything to keep you satisfied. To find us, go to the 3rd bridge and you will see me.
The app works for her because she didn't go to school and doesn't understand French. Tembele says her earnings have tripled since she started using the app. Just like other social media apps, Lenali provides users options such as likes and posts, and its interface is available in different local languages.
I installed it myself because Lenani has Bambara, Soninke, and almost all the languages. I haven't gone to school, so if there's Bambara, obviously I'm interested.
Lenali was developed by Mamadou Gouro Sidibe, an IT engineer from Mali. Sidibe got the idea to create the app when the manager of a shop he regularly visits asked him to read a message in French on the chat application Viber. It took him years to develop the app, leaving his career in French startups to work on what he says is the world's only voice-based network.
I decided Lenali should be a vocal social media app in the local language because I need to allow people like him to understand what they are doing when they try and install it. A lot of people get applications installed for them because they can't do it themselves. So it was with that in mind that we created vocal guides, vocal instructions in the local language so people can understand what they are doing. Right up to doing your profile vocally. If you know how to write it, you can put it in writing, and if not, you can speak into the application and record it. And after that, you can publish vocally, you can comment vocally, and really you can do everything in this application without having to write a single word.
Before the application, most small business owners in Mali relied on friends, family, and word of mouth to keep them going. Now they can reach out further afield and attract a wider net of customers through the Vocal app and sharing network. According to the United Nations, only 33% of Malians are illiterate. The free app, available since January 2017, has 73,500 users. Sidibe expects his app to become profitable when he signs up 200,000 users. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
And on to Niger, where a female entrepreneur is running a successful agro-food processing company in the largely desert country. Here's CGTN's Mahia Mutua with that story.
Abdul Karim Fatoumata Kefi is a rising star of female entrepreneurship in Niger. She is the CEO of Fanta House, which offers ready-to-use products made from local cereals. Kefi insists women entrepreneurship is essential in the development of a country.
A country cannot develop without women. Women are champions. They have to dare to undertake. We have a lot of female business models, even here in Niger. And when we go out to represent Niger abroad, we always leave marks. And we are proud of it because we have worn the colors of the country.
Before embarking on her journey in 2017, Kefi had worked in various fields. She estimated her budget at $38. Today, her company has a turnover of more than $17,000 and employs a dozen people, mostly women.
Today, I would say out of 100%, we have arrived at 75% of the female entrepreneurship rate. Women have understood that being employed by the state is not easy. So women are fighting today to take care of themselves. Women have taken the path of empowerment.
Kefi has participated in trade fairs around the world, earning her several awards and admiration from her peers. The success has brought about exquisite planning and organization of her business.
At my level, I have a well-defined calendar. I have time for my work, my husband, my children, and my employees. Besides, I also have to take care of myself. It's not easy, but I try to do my best.
In the various banks where my wife worked before embarking on entrepreneurship, they called Fanta Dynamic. I encouraged her to start a business, and today I will not say that she's the biggest female entrepreneur in Niger, but she has managed to make her way in the field of entrepreneurship, and I'm proud of it.
Today, Africa has the highest rate of entrepreneurial activity globally. In Niger, Kefi is spearheading the fight for women in Africa to be more independent. She dreams of one day turning her company into a multinational corporation. Mahe Mutua, CGTN.
I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though, in Global Business. We'll be exploring Turkey's plans to send troops into the middle of a country that's essentially ground zero for another proxy war. Libya, you've got troops from Russia, UAE, Egypt, they're all in that country. So what's Turkey's interest in that North African oil producer? We'll find out at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here in the program. Here's what's ahead. Telling Somalia's story, a new artistic initiative seeks to inspire positive journalism.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay, we'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra Naidu. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Let's go to Somalia, where a local initiative is providing a platform for journalists and artists in the country to showcase their best work, while also hoping to promote a positive view of the country. Art lovers can shop among the displayed photos for pieces that appeal to them. CGTN's Jen Keo brings us this story.
My Gallery is a program by local media and technology companies in Mogadishu, providing a space for photojournalists and artists in Somalia to display their beautifully captured photos and crafted paintings.
The main purpose of this program, My Gallery, is to encourage the photojournalists and to show the outside world and what's happening, truly happening in Somalia, and to focus on more positive stories, and at the same time to reward the photographers in what they have done.
Intending to change narratives in the country, the work of some of the city's photographers, among them city journalists and artists, was also displayed.
I am grateful to be part of this event where one of my photos was showcased. I am actually a doctor by profession, but it's heartwarming to see your work presented in front of hundreds of people. That is great encouragement.
And out of them, the winners were chosen.
It is a great honor for me to be among the winners of the Best Photojournalist at My Gallery event. I feel happy and excited as one of my photos was purchased. I encourage other Somali photographers to use their lenses to showcase the positive side of the country.
The event was also open to buyers who purchased a few of the photos that caught their attention. All this in a bid to support and encourage positive journalism in the country. The organizers hope to make this an annual event, showcasing the most appealing photos and paintings from all over the country. Jane Keo, CGTN.
Participants in Peru's annual Slugfest battled it out on Wednesday in the local Takanaku Fighting Festival. The unique festival presents fans with an opportunity to settle the old scores at the end of the year in preparation for the fresh start. Takanakuwi combines the native words take, meaning fight, and naku, meaning mutual, and is celebrated each year during the holidays. Community members say this helps to resolve conflicts and improves relationships. The yearly brawls are held throughout the province of Chumbi, Velkas, and are set against the backdrop of music, drinking, and a generally festive atmosphere. This form of community justice allows participants to start the new year in peace.
It is not only a festival to fix problems, but it is also a way to release everything we keep to ourselves in the year. It's also the adoration of our child Jesus, and it is a way of saying that all residents from Chumbi-Vilkas are here.
Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Action resumes in the group phase of the CAF Champions League.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.